If this is your first time coming out to our new home here in Kingston, welcome. We're really excited to be joined tonight by the way, I'm Sarah Danziger. I'm the Education Program Manager, if you don't already know me. So if you have any questions about any of the things that you've been seeing on the slideshow, including our photo book and zine fair, which also is on your seat, that's going to be happening next weekend. That is going to be very fun. Please meet us in this space. We'll be here for morning panels that will open up each day of the fair. So if you like what you see tonight, if you like this format, there'll be more of it. It'll be more of a conversation those 2 days, followed by a full day of fair upstairs with Z-making rooms and over 30 publishers and independent artists who are making photo books and zines and other materials as well. So yes, we're very excited to be joined by Virginia Reath. She is featured in this incredible show behind me down the hall. If you haven't already gotten to check out, curated by Justine Kurland and CPW's curator Marina Chow. It's called The Rose. If you haven't already seen it, when we shut down, I suggest just running back there and having a peek. It'll be up through August 31st. So if you can't get enough, keep coming back, please. I definitely am myself. So without further ado, I'm going to get started. We meet here every week for Meet the Artists. So if you like this format, if you want to listen to artists talk about their work and share behind the scenes, please join us here. We're here every Thursday, opening at 5:30, and talks start at 6. And we are, this is made possible by a generous grant from the Arnold and Augusta Newman Foundation. So that's how we're able to make this free. That's how we're able to support the artists that come and provide some coffee and babka. So Virginia Reath has been a practicing clinician, educator, and activist in the fields of gynecology, sexual and reproductive health care for the past 30 years. Virginia studied painting and drawing at Bard College in the early 70s. It was during this time that her commitment as a feminist brought her attention to the sexual and reproductive health needs of women and the lack of parity. She chose healthcare as her political work. Her political interest and clinical experience in matters of the flesh have been integral to her practice as an artist. She resists the idea of the body as a singular static object, echoing Simone de Beauvoir's statement, "The body is not a thing, it is a situation." From 1995 to 1999, Reath co-hosted Snatches, a cult favorite women's health talk show on WBAI, New York City Public Radio. Reath created and produced Changing Bodies, a work on menstruation for the Girls Project, an after-school program for 10 years. She was awarded the Pink Award by the Girls Project in 2005. Reath was the recipient of the ACLU Reproductive Rights Project Award in 2000 for her work and activism in women's reproductive justice. So we're very excited to welcome Virginia up here. Please give her a warm welcome.
Do I hit the button when I change?
Exactly. You say right.
Just this way or right and left?
You can go back that way, but forward.
Okay, forward is the way to go. Okay, hi everyone. It's really lovely to be here. I'm sorry the weather is so nasty, but it is what it is. As I had said to a couple of people, you know, it's funny. It's easy for me. If someone told me that I had to give a talk on perimenopause for 300 people, I'd be like, great, where, when? I'll do it. The idea of talking about my work is a little bit more daunting, but I think hopefully I'll be managed, and I'm in the company of good friends and people. So as Sarah had said, during the early 70s, as a young art student, I became very involved in the anti-war, feminist, and abortion rights movement alongside my art practice. But while studying at Bard, I began to find the practice of making art extremely confusing in the midst of such political upheaval. It certainly did not help that at that time in the art world, they were screaming loudly that painting was dead. No, I mean really dead. So it was a daft time to try to be studying the work. So in 1970, abortion was illegal in New York State, but now there was a movement to make it legal across the United States. The national right to know movement in women's health, where our bodies ourselves originated, was also gaining momentum. In 1973, a friend who had gone to Brown gave me a plastic speculum and a handout on how to use it, and said there were groups of women all over learning how to take control of their bodies and their own health. I was intrigued. I came back to Bard and created a self-help collective out of my women's group. Now they were also intrigued. So I now began to consider pursuing health and medicine as my political work. I was motivated by a deep desire to change the world, to guarantee and protect autonomy and agency over our bodies in pursuit of sexual and reproductive justice for all. I was and still am curious on how the body and the holders of bodies tell our stories and who, in fact, was listening. I was also keen on understanding the politics of medicine to dictate and falsely narrate those stories. However, remember, I came to medicine with an artist's eye, a poet's sensibility, and a desire for political change. I was determined to hold on to all three. I left art school and entered a pre-med program at NYU in 1974. I guess the rest is history for those of you who know me as a clinician. As I immersed myself as a clinician and activist in women's health through the 80s, I was continually pulled back towards making art as my essential life practice. The artist's work that I'd come to know after art school while studying medicine made lasting impressions on me. Carolee Schneemann, who was a friend, Anna Manetta, Louise Bourgeois, Nancy Spiro, Joan Snyder, Ida Applebrook, Barbara Kruger, Pat Steer, Hannah Wilkie, Elizabeth Murray, Harmony Hammond. Over the 40 years of my medical practice and more years of art making, I would say that Simone de Beauvoir's statement, "The body is not a thing, but a situation," best describes my work, both medically and artistically. My practice in gynecology has allowed me direct access to the matters of the flesh and the multitude of lived experiences surrounding those matters. Bleeding, sex, infections, missed periods, hormones, violence, betrayals, pain, pregnancy, miscarriage, abortion, adoption, motherhood, death, and disease, including the psychological and emotional impact of those situations of a life on many. These realities absolutely resist the idea of the body as a static, singular object. They are the living situations of the female-born body, which have become solidly integrated into my visual vocabulary. I often have worked in series, mostly which allowed me more flexibility given the constraints of my job since I had a full-time practice. So different mediums depended on space considerations, if I had a studio or not. I would use inks, dyes, oil sticks, drawing, clay, scales of large and small. I try to cross-pollinate visually with different need perspectives and concerns to illustrate the changing body. In this way, collage is truly an integrative practice. For me, the pieces that come together to visually try to interpret the intersectional chaos that the female-born body experiences is so both challenging and also exciting. So whether the work is abstract, figurative, or sculptural, my art comes from both my lived experience and of bearing witness to the women born I have cared for and the women born I have known. Medicine gave me the knowledge and ability to enter and record this intimate space. I try to make that space as safe as I possibly can for all my patients, but not so safe for the viewers of my art. I make art to awaken the living. So I've put together some slides of my work. Just trying to figure this out. So I put this is my name. I put this in as a really early drawing. This was, hold on, sorry. Getting myself organized here. The cervix drawing is from 1973. It was one of the first things I've ever done, the first drawings I ever did of the interior of a body. And interestingly enough, it also foreshadowed what would become the focus of my professional life for the next 40 years. I put this in because I just thought this was something that I was doing when I was in medical school. I was doing these large-scale anatomy drawings of bones, of organs, of lungs, of livers. And this is one that I recently found again. And it's been a favorite of mine ever since. So the whales, these are all on my website, which you'll see the ending, but the whales, everyone's always curious about, like, where did the whales come from? The whales came from around in the early 80s. I was at Coney Island, and there was the beluga whales that were under the water in the big aquarium. And I was just stunned. I was stunned. And I think that some of the images that are on my website that show it, but there's a lot more of those photographs there. But I was so stunned by the physicality of them and the beauty of them and the fact that they just spoke to me of skin, which is strange, but they did. And so I had done a series of whale drawings, both in color and black and white, big and small. But then I really started realizing that one of the things that I loved in my work was I really did love the landscape of skin. And so I did a whole series of these drawings, which are really about the sort of luminosity and the density of flesh. And so there's this, as I said, this is just a sort of fast run through of some of the early work, but I became really interested in the skin drawings. And then the other thing that happened was when I started doing skin, I also started I did a series of photographs using an old Polaroid and making sepia prints and different prints with focusing on the belly. And that was when I began to understand the belly. I had a good friend who was a high-risk ultrasound sonographer for high-risk pregnancies. And she was the one she sort of brought to my attention this remarkable thing, which is that the belly button is actually the first scar of our own making, meaning the umbilicus and the placenta are of our making. It's of the embryo's making. It's not of the mother's making. So the very first scar that we walk around with is this sort of separation of self, which fascinated me. And subsequently, I ended up doing a series of belly button drawings. As I said, there's not that many that I put in here, but they really had a kind of real poetic resonance for me. And then I was just I did a lot of portraits of different bellies, pregnant bellies, men's bellies, kids' bellies. And this is one of the ones that I did. So what was also happening in my life as a time, because here I am, I'm trying to work at the same time. And I realized that I also, during this time, had always been collecting historical sex books, sex education books, eugenics books, and marriage counseling books, which were fascinating. I mean, fascinating also in the development and the language of gender, the language of body, how binary it is, but in a weird way, almost less binary than it is now, believe it or not. So I began to do, I didn't have a studio during this time, so my work ended up being smaller. And these were texts that I took out, collage text that I took out. And then I was the grid and the grill and the net has always been a very strong piece in my work. I think it's also how I experience sometimes the world is being caught in a net. And that this one in particular came from a title of a book, which was called The Sexual Life of a Woman. And this one was titled The Girl Who Made a Mistake. So then there was this, again, the net, and then the language, which you can see when you get a chance to read it, you can see more of the text. But it was also a way to contextualize the way that language can alter your lived experience. It's like, and the disruption, we talked a little bit about this in the discussion around collage, but that's also what collage can do. It can take something and then you as the artist get to manipulate it and change it and alter it. And that's what becomes really exciting, I think. I put these in just because I found them, they were early considerations. The calendars, I began to really understand how important calendars were in the sense of time and how women and men experience time differently. Because for women, there is consequence within their body. And that is something that really changes your perspective. That we are left with our bodies, that something's happening. We don't tend to ever explain ovulation. It is never spoken about. Menstruation spoken about, but not ovulation. And at this time, I started to work with 9 and 12-year-olds. I developed a program called Changing Bodies. And it was part of something called the Girls Project, which was an after-school program for little girls to kind of learn about solidarity and friendship and to also learn about your body. So I started this program, which I was very proud of because I think it was very effective. Because one of my favorite things in this program was we were going to try to do a little video shoot of it, which I have, but it didn't work out, unfortunately. But I'll give you this idea, just this setup. I had maybe, let's say 15 or 12 little girls, ranging from 9 to 12. And I would say what I would do, who I was, and they'd all go, ew, ew, or like, yes, I don't want to talk about this. Like, I get it. But anyway, within 45 minutes of working with these kids, I created a song about their period and how they knew. And I wanted them to learn the language of their body, their anatomy. So I turned it into this skit and this really funny song. And so within 45 minutes, I had girls now screaming, I want to be a vagina. I want to be an egg. Can I be a fallopian tube? Does you do the Hawaiian loop with the fallopian tube? So, and many years later, I would receive letters from my students saying that it was something that they never forgot. And that they just remembered learning with such joy and such excitement about learning that. So it committed, I'm as a practitioner, those of you, I know there's several of my patients here, know that what I'm really dedicated to in my practice is education. It's absolutely key. And medicine doesn't do that very often these days. It doesn't teach, it doesn't explain, it doesn't sit with you. It doesn't look at you. It doesn't talk to you. So that was a fun project, and the calendars kind of came out of that because I was very moved by also how much timing. Certainly, I did this, but how much timing you looked at a calendar when you thought you were pregnant. It's like you have to find out when you did have a period. Then you have to look back and figure out, well, when were you together? And then you have to figure out, well, where were you in your cycle? And what day is that anyway? Is it the 12th day, the 14th day? Is it the 6th day? What day? So you're always a little powerless. And I saw how powerlessness really affected women in a deeper way. And that's what some of these calendars are about. And this is, you can't really see it, but there's a calendar of numbers that's on a veil over the belly. Okay, so moving along, because I don't want to take up huge amounts of time. The belly cups were an interesting project. The belly cups, I was given, you know, in medicine, there's some really bizarre pharmaceutical gifts that you get. I mean, really out there kind of gifts. You know, one, I got a gift of a white chocolate spinal cord. And it was by a bone building drug company. It's like, wow, I can't wait to eat that. You know, just things that didn't make sense. Anyway, one of the things that I kept getting were these pregnancy cups. And they fascinated me. They fascinated me as objects of what their intent was, of the idea of this cup. And so these drawings on top were really about me sort of describing, illustrating, putting on the different kinds of environments and different situations that the pregnant body can exist within. So I did a series of these. This is only one of them, but that's what the belly cups are. And there's actually one of the belly cups is featured in the poem that I wrote called One, which we have here for sale to support the medical miscarriage and abortion hotline, which is one of a national hotlines that helps women anonymously be able to get medical care on telemedicine. So it's a group I've worked with over the years, and I feel really strongly about that. So they are for sale, and the money will go directly to the hotline. So the whales again, the whales keep coming back, but the whales were the underwater whales, the way in which the water would reflect. I was being trained to be a sonographer at this time, and they just resonated with me when I was doing sonograms. This strange, very out of focus. They're very different now. I mean, sonograms are so clear now, but in the early days, they were like looking through fuzz and light. It's all about light and dark, and what showed up as light and what showed up as dark. So these photos of the whales were something that I used in a collage triptych series and called Amnion, which is also on my website. This is one of the triptychs. So these are coming from, there's a water image. These are also, these are images of an embryo, one of a someone who's not pregnant any longer, but still has pregnancy tissue. Another is a tiny embryo within the sac of the uterus. I started doing a lot of drawings on top of the sonogram images because that was something, a lot of paintings that I've done with this series, and trying to break out and sort of bring a little bit more interest into that image. And then this one, again, the things that relate, the cup, the whale, the belly. So that was really about what the Amnion series was really focused on in a way. And then we get to, so as I said, I wasn't quite sure. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of work on the website because it was my first website in like 30 years. So you'll have to just kind of pick your way through it. But the recent series, which is called There Will Be Blood and Blood Gloves, the second title is It's Just Not That Easy. Frankly, after Dobbs was in 2021, the Dobbs decision, which basically it was my response to the gutting of that right, of that national right to be able to have an abortion. And subsequently, we've lost a huge amount of reproductive health care. I mean, I think we're a bit in the fuzz here in New York because we have such good protections. And you might notice also, which is strange, that there is nothing in the news, in the mainstream news, almost nothing, if you start to look for it, on abortion. So you have to really find the people who are doing this. And what we know is there are women in jail right now. There are women in jail for taking the pill. There are teenagers. There are teenagers and mothers. There are women who are sitting in the emergency rooms. So they're sitting in the cars and they're being told to sit in a car in the parking lot of an emergency room because physicians are not allowed to touch them because of a fearful either $100,000 fine or 100 years in prison, practically. So, hold on for a second, I got a little discombobulated. So when that happened, basically all I could see was blood. I just was in a rage. I really was in a terrible rage. I knew well the fear of an unplanned pregnancy. I had been there several times myself, and I had held the hands and the bodies of many. I wanted to speak my despair of the coming restrictions and cruelty, the lack of care and the lack of empathy, and the terrifying hatred and disregard landed on us. It's not so much the blood of an abortion that I'm interested in, but the blood that we shed as women born and how it changes us, because even a healthy body bleeds. So one of the things I was working with at that time was I was trying to, what was the palette of blood, you know? I used dyes, I used watercolors, inks, flash. I was really trying to get at both the fluidity, but also the density of it. And so these are just some of the images from this more recent period. So these are some paintings that I've done. This is a painting that I did early on. A patient of mine was hemorrhaging and could not access care up here. And it was a very tight moment. And I really felt at that moment that I had to just sort of, you know, draw what that is, what that feels like when you're just bleeding out. And it's pretty scary. So I moved into the second period of this was blood gloves. And blood gloves came really from using collage as a kind of, it's always been a constant medium in my work. I did a whole series of collages early on, which I didn't show here. But so the assemblage and editing of disparate materials encouraged such a wide range of connections that I make personally daily in art and medicine. So it's also it's me sharing that, if you will. It's actually the most integrative of the practices because it brings together all these different layers. And that way you can put an image and lay another image next to it and change the context and the content immediately. But it comes from also, it's the interweaving, and you'll see this in some of the ones to follow, that there's historical medical text, there's anatomy and physiology, there are diagrams, and then the images of my own trade, which are gloves and speculums and sonograms and calendars, which allows me the rich pollination of visually different perspectives. So this is, the image here is of basically a a wreck. I mean, it's a house wreck. It's a house wrecking. And when I passed it, it hit me. I thought, wow, that's it. That's what you feel like. You feel like your house is being wrecked. Some of the times I used real gloves, and some of the times I used scans. This one, again, you'll see calendars, because calendars are so key, especially when you're talking about pregnancies and bleeding, and or just the medical intervention. That's my business. That's what I carry. So I'm gonna jump, not to that. I'm gonna jump. So this is the piece that's in the show. And again, it's this, pregnant belly, a sonogram of a embryo, and a calendar and a glove. And so you can kind of read it. It could be your own glove. It could be the glove of medicine. It could be also one of the things that's interesting to me about gloves, and I'm working on this even further now, which is the whole idea of the cleanup crew. That so many times also women are in the cleanup crew. Women and people of color and women of color are often left, especially in medicine, to clean up. And so that really interests me, this whole idea of cleaning up. And that's also that happens in this world. There's a degree of cleaning up. Okay, I'm going to end. I wish I had some different pictures of this, but one of the things, I began working at clay. Actually, a friend of mine who's here, Helena Starcevic, who's a great ceramicist. But I called her one day. I said, what do you do when you're in your studio and you're just, working ideas? And she said, well, I make pinch pots. And I said, pinch pots? And she said, yeah, I get some clay. And so interestingly, when I was a bard, I really wanted to be a sculptor, but I could not bear the feeling of clay on my hands. It just put me, in high alert. Anyway, so I had been at the store recently, Michael's, which is our art store up here. And I found Clayola, Arab clay, right? And I thought, well, shit, I can use that. So I did, and I started doing, I began, one of the things also in my work, and I'm also a poet, so I've done a lot of poems about this as well. What is it about the whole? What is the whole? What meaning does it carry in our world? And I was reflecting about this, what's the whole? What's an orifice? The slits, the fissures, the gash, the canal, and all the things that come to mind from my practice, and also the contradictions within my own profession that have crossed that boundary of the whole. And I also was thinking about how many women I knew who lived in terror and fear of the whole, and also of the whole being violated, which it is. So one of the things that really pushed me forward to make these sculptures is when I was doing this, I stumbled upon this incredible poem by Toy Derricotte, which is called Pantoum for the Broken. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'll read the first stanza. How many of us were fingered, a soft thing with a hole in it, thing that won't tell, that can't tell. I forget how many times I was broken. And that really hit me in a big way. And so the sculptures, of which there are many, this is just a section, are all kind of investigating that, and also continually to investigate the blood issue. So I'm hoping that my work continues to reveal the embodied experiences and contradictions of the female born by bringing various parts and images together. I think I read this already, but maybe not. Oh, well, what I was going to say earlier was, I came to medicine with a artist's eye. Did I say that already? I did, right? That's what I thought. It's a good line. Yeah, I'll say it again. I came to medicine with an artist's eye, and I didn't lose it. And that's really important. So I'm coming to the end, and I just would say this, is that I want to thank you all for your recognition and your support. And I do hope it inspires you as well to advocate to what matters for you. Medicine gave me the knowledge and the ability to enter and record this intimate space. And I try to make that space as safe as I can for my patients, but not so safe for the viewers of art. I make art to awaken the living. Thank you. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions for me? No? Yes?
First of all, I admire your work, and I would love your work, really, and I respect it. Somehow, the message that you told us is very frightening and tears my heart apart, and I can't get rid of the feeling, or I would like to ask you, how can you make your work more powerful?
Well, good question.
It seems benign to a certain degree. And I'm thinking of Barbara Kruger, who, plasters big messages, but they're also very beautiful.
Yep.
So what I'm saying is, how can you make your message as strong as your feelings?
Well, I think that's, actually, I just had written something about that, which is, hold on, I think if I can just check it here. When I lean towards art making when I cannot hold the content of the stuff that so disturbs me, and I lean into that because it's a place that I can establish some kind of dialogue. Something happens in that space, but it's a challenge. And listen, when I started doing the blood gloves, I had some friends and other artists who thought, whoa, V, that's like way too much. Like you're not, but I felt compelled because I thought, wait, I don't want to fuck around anymore. I want to tell the truth. This is actually what's happening. So I do feel that I can push that envelope and that I can, but I don't want to be, I just think sometimes the message comes after you leave. Like one of the things that I think I will read the lines of the poem because I think it speaks to that directly. But I'll take another question in the interim.
With all due respect to my friend, I disagree with him. I don't think they're benign at all. I think they're incredibly powerful. And I think Barbara Kruger has a place, and I think you have a very powerful voice. I just think they're different, and I think one of the most impressive things about my own learning about your work is the complete package. You know,
Yeah.
where you come to artists, you know, being an artist, how you come to the science, how you're this extraordinary being of all, you know, quality and I'm losing words, I'm trying.
Keep going.
But so often you have artists that channel feelings, but you bring a completely different, substantial background. It's not just thoughts and feelings and theories.
Right.
This is, you know, you're on the front line.
Yeah.
And what I find so powerful about the work is that this is evidence from the front lines. And, you know, the blood,
Right.
extraordinarily powerful.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what you mean by benign. But for me, it's actually.
Well, this piece is not the same. This piece is a very different. This piece is more about the poem and the image than something else.
Well, obviously, there's variations
Yeah.
of degrees in it, of course.
Right.
But what I think is, I would love to break this value sculpture.
Well, I think she did when she showed that.
I have
series of like 9 or 12 of them.
That's next year.
We have to wait that long?
No, maybe a couple of months.
I think what Virginia does is explore kind of intimacy when the body is failing
Right.
and it's being tempted to, in a medicinal way, for lack of a better, you know, it's not.
Well, in a system where you're not sure you're safe.
Right, and you said that, and I think that that's what is really powerful about the work. And not many people do it, and it's like in your head and in your body at the same time. I don't know how big they should be to have that feeling, you know. Anyway, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, and also for me, you know, this is the first time that I've had an ongoing studio for a really long time. So that's also another piece. It's like I'm revving up because I haven't really, I've had such dislocation in my studio space and even in my practice because it was always trying to fill it in at different times, you know. That's why I would kind of work on smaller pieces or collaging just because, but then when you want to get bigger, you know, it demands more time and more attention to it. So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to pushing a lot of the work in a different way too. And I'm interested also in almost going more abstractly well, I think, I'm going to read this poem to you because I think something about this poem speaks to what I'm trying to also do. So, I have always wanted one. I was made to have one. I never wanted one. I was afraid of having one. I would not have one. I never thought I could have one. I was unable to have one. I always thought about having one. I lost two. I never stopped wanting one. I wanted to have this one. I always wanted three. I was afraid of having one. I was forced to have one. I can't stop thinking about having one. I'm afraid of not wanting one. I did not want the second one. I never tried to have one. I could only have one. I was scared to have one. I wanted to have a third one. I did not want this one. I will always want one. I will never have one. I had one once. I had 4. I lost 5. And so, you know, why it's about the play of the word one, and it's also, what is it? Pregnancy, abortion. What is it? And that's something, those phrases I've heard for 40 years. From mothers, singles, I mean, so they're very resonant for me, and they're interchangeable. And that's one of the reasons that I put them together like that in this format, because it's a bit abstract and it's not that clear, and it's never that clear, honestly. You know, the decision to carry pregnancy is fraught often, and sometimes you have no choice in the matter at all, and other times you have so much choice you don't know where to go. So I think that's a landscape that I feel that I'm intimate with, both in my own life, but also in my patients' lives. And I've seen every kind of continuum of that dynamic, you know. And what I will say also, I just wanted to give something back to you all. One of the things that I am proud of, as you put it, that integration of one of the things about when I was getting up to talk or just talking about my history was also this real feeling of, wow, how grateful and lucky am I to have had this integrated life. You know, there are 10 patients of mine in this room, women I've seen in all different times in their lives. And that's meaningful to me, in as much as the integration of me, you know, as a kid, I was an artist. That's what I was going to do. I was going to be a poet and an artist, and I was not going to do anything about medicine. I mean, I couldn't pass a math class to save my ass. But so anyway, so I really want to say something also, because that's also something that I'm very grateful for. I'm grateful for you all, because you've taught me so much. I'll say something. Yes.
I'm wondering how we get this empathy through to the other gender. It's something that struck me basically all my life, because I never quite fit it in with the other guys. That's because of the relationship, the deep relationship I have with women.
Right.
And I don't know how we build that bond so that we're not just two separate genders, but we're one moving fluid. We're a unity, we're collaborate, we have empathy for the other.
Well, I
remember
hope that
watching our daughter come out of my wife. And suddenly, you know, there was my wife coming out of her mother, then coming out of her mother. It was feminine. There were no men in that vision.
right.
And I suddenly understood the insecurity of being male.
Well, yes, there's an
We
insecurity.
cannot do that miraculous thing.
Right, and so what do? We don't support the male. We vilify the female.
And it just so upsets me.
It does, and I can't agree with you more.
So how
It's
do
a
we
deep
reach
pain.
that? How do we get them when they're young, like my mother reached to me? You know, you talk about so many things, but so much of my understanding of life comes from women. The knowledge that the egg that made me was in my maternal grandmother, Maud, who was blind and deaf, but I used to read poems to her, read books and letters to her. She would cook me Sunday meal, despite all of this, you know. And then my mother talks about having a miscarriage in 1962, crossing Red Square in Moscow, because she was there on a conference with my father.
Yeah, I mean, I think that also we have to take the bonds off of women to be able to talk about their experiences. And we have to also understand that men need to be able to show up. It's just showing up. It's showing up and having the patience to stand, listen, and be able to, you know, show up for somebody. So I agree with you. We're in a time of greater polarity than ever, I think. And we just have to make our efforts to communicate to each other. And be curious. That's one thing that's really interesting to me, how so lack of curiosity about the other. We need to ask questions. We need to, you know, look at what you're talking about is life, and also look at what we've done with death. I mean, you know, I have some people here who are part of my team who are, you know, death doulas and people who are working to try to become more comforting and more comfortable with the topic of death and dying. But, you know, that's a topic also that's just, you know, it's like, and my issue is if we turn these things over to corporate world, we're fucked. So we have to keep, even if that means we go rogue, even that means you go rogue as a man in the world, go rogue. But go get off the grid in that way. Like, we need to be able to find the people so that we can create communities that are safer, or that there's knowledge exchange. It's like one of the things that I do. I mean, I'm totally like, you want to talk about menopause and perimenopause? Give me a call. You know, because I want to put that out so everyone to share that information. Because it's not a woman going nuts. That's all. So anyway, I don't want to take, but I hear you, and it's tragic and it hurts. It's painful to me as well. I would like to say one other thing just before I think we have to end. But could we just have a moment, maybe even not 60 minutes, 60 seconds, or can we just have a moment of 30 seconds of silence, partly to reflect on what you were saying, and partly to reflect on that, because it's breaking my heart. So if we can, that would be great. Thank you. Thank you.